Hello everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who has a sin. I hope you're doing well, and today I have a follow-up video to the video I did yesterday on Scarlett Johansson suing Disney for breach of contract for the film Black Widow, claiming that in the original contract, she had an agreement with Disney that the film would have a theatrically exclusive release, because if the film makes more money theatrically, she, based on the contract, also makes more money. And so what she is trying to claim here is not only that there was a breach of contract, but that because of that breach of contract, she did not get nearly as much money as she had expected. Basically, you have a very rich woman complaining about a massive multi-billion-dollar corporation not giving her even more money, which of course she feels entitled to. So before going further into the clapback that is coming now from Disney, and also how Disney continues to expose itself for the just awful company that it is, it still boggles my mind as to why Disney stock has always been so consistently high. Starts to make you kind of ask questions about how it is that they've been able to do that, especially when you look to some of their biggest properties, especially when you usually account for the fact that most of their money comes from Disney films, you would imagine, and yet they have not really made any financially successful films in the last year and a half, and yet their stock has remained almost, for the most part, unchanged. But before going any further, please make sure that you smash that like button, light up that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey. Also, make sure you check out the links in the description to find out ways that you can follow me on social media and ways that you can support the channel. So, as I reported yesterday, Scarlett Johansson has indeed brought Disney to court, but Disney is striking back now, according to Deadline, saying here that Black Widow made for Scarlett Johansson so far $20 million. So the way that Disney decided to respond to this was to first say, this is ridiculous, this is absurd, and not to mention, so far, she has made about $20 million from the film. Now, obviously, $20 million to someone like me is a crap ton of money, and it's very clear that she is not for lack of funds at this point. She's been paid very well for the course of the time that she's been in the MCU, and I'm sure that she's been paid very well in all the other projects that she's been a part of, because many people view her as a box office sensation, even though there really is not a whole lot of evidence to back that up at this point, especially with a film like Black Widow, because at this point we can absolutely say hashtag Black Widow lost money, because the only way the film was going to be able to cross the point of being financially viable was relying on those Disney Plus numbers. And based on what I've seen so far, it seems to me that at the very least, Disney might end up settling with Scarlett Johansson, and that means it's going to cut into the funds that they've made, or quote made, from Disney Plus, and therefore those funds, in my opinion, are pretty much off the table unless we find out that this lawsuit is either thrown out or that Scarlett Johansson has to pay back damages, which to me would be hilarious. Like, imagine if Scarlett Johansson loses this lawsuit and then has to pay $20 million or something similar to that, and has to basically pay back everything that she made from this movie, at least the bonuses that she made from this movie, based off the release. I think that would be pretty funny. Again, no matter who wins and who loses, they're both terrible. Neither side is good. Neither side is the good person in this whole ordeal, because you have a rich woman who wants more money on one side and a giant multi-billion-dollar corporation who just wants to hold on to all the funds they have because they're not making anything on the other. And so, again, I can't really see how one takes one side over the other, but obviously everyone's going to have their side, and I can understand why a lot of people would probably be more on the side of Scarlett Johansson, because obviously Disney is a giant evil corporation. All right, as it goes on here, this is the update. It says here, the Walt Disney Corporation has fired back at Scarlett Johansson's lawsuit over the release of Black Widow in a biting statement in which it is said that the litigation showed a callous disregard to the COVID-19 pandemic, and even revealed that she has so far received $20 million from the project. So pretty bold on their part to reveal how much money she has made. Again, that could also potentially be brought up in the lawsuit. I don't know if the contract that is brought up allows them to reveal the amount of money that an actor would get. I'm assuming that that might get brought up now, since they have now put that out there for the world to see. But again, I am no legal expert, and so we'll have to wait and see. I, of course, have not seen, and most of us have not seen, that contract or know anything about the details of that contract. And so obviously it's going to be something that a lawyer and a judge mostly is going to have to determine whether or not there was any violation of said contract. So the Disney spokesperson said this, quote, "There is no merit whatsoever to this filing. The lawsuit is especially sad and distressing in its callous disregard for the horrific and prolonged global effects of the COVID-19 pandemic." There it is, everybody, blaming the pandemic for Disney's failings. When in reality, we've seen films that have come out this year make money. It comes down to a couple things. One, those films did not waste hundreds of millions of dollars on projects that did not need to cost that amount of money. And two, they made movies that, hey, people actually wanted to see. They made movies that people actually were driven to the theater to go see. So we can blame the pandemic to only an extent, Disney. At some point, you have to put those fingers and point them back at yourself and realize that, oh, no, we made some very bad financial decisions because we just assumed that audiences would just blindly consume anything with Marvel attached to it for $200 million plus budgets every single time. That is something that you need to start to come to grips with, Disney. Pandemic can only take you so far. At the end of the day, when it comes down to the massive financial losses that you have been experiencing, a lot of it comes down to very poor financial decisions by putting way too much money into your projects and by not putting out products that people actually want to see. Again, all of those things have to be taken into account. There's no doubt that COVID-19 has had some impact, but to say that it's the entirety of everything is a bit ridiculous. It goes on, Disney has fully complied with Miss Johansson's. Oh. Yeah, things are very official now. Basically, you can say, Scarlett Johansson was very clearly like, yep, I'm done. This is the last thing I'm doing, and it would be interesting to see. Now, obviously, there's been fallouts between actors and studios before, so there's no reason for them not to make amends at some point in the future, but obviously, at this point, there's no, I could say that there's no initial plans for them to kiss and make up. So it says, Disney has fully complied with Miss Johansson's contract, and furthermore, the release of Black Widow on Disney Plus with Premier Access has significantly enhanced her ability to earn additional compensation on top of the $20 million she has received to date, end quote. So it seems to indicate there that she is getting something from the Disney Plus numbers, which if that is indeed true and is the case, it would make it very difficult for Scarjo to prove damages, because that was one thing that someone brought up in the comment, that you kind of have to prove that there's been damage done in some capacity. And so if the original contract stated theatrical release and it was not a part of the original release or original contract to have it on Disney Plus, one could argue that that is amounts, and you're claiming that Disney is claiming $60 to $100 million from Disney Plus. Well, then an actor who has a contract would say, wait a minute, that's $60 to $100 that I could have gotten a piece of had that money been made in theaters. However, if there was something in the contract that included some type of digital or premium streaming platform, and there was a certain percentage, but she just didn't like it because she didn't think it would be successful at the moment that the contract was signed, and then once she realized, or at least according to Disney, that it was going to make a lot more than that, then she realized, oh, wait a minute, damages, original contract. So yeah, it's obviously something that a judge is going to have to kind of sift through, and at the end of the day, it is just two rich sides trying to fight over money, and again, it's just kind of ridiculous, and it really stupid at the end of the day. So yeah, Walt Disney not looking good in any of this, and Scarlett Johansson is looking, I would say, even worse in all of this, because again, the fact that they even were able to say, yeah, by the way, you've gotten $20 million from this film so far, and I would assume that's not what she was paid before the film came out. That seems, based on what was released, that seems to be indicative of the $20 million that she has received is specifically from the Black Widow release, meaning that from the $300+ million it's made worldwide, she's received about $20 million of a cut of those financial receipts, which I think kind of also raises more questions as far as how could anyone really at this point say that that movie is going to be a financial success. This is something that I've been bringing up constantly in my box office breakdowns when you actually look at how much money the film has made to date and how much money it still needs to make, right? It's at negative $108 million right now. My original projections had it making between $16 million at best in profit and losing $73 million. I would say that anyone saying, well, you got to take into account Disney Plus, and again, depending on how this lawsuit goes, that most likely would have to be tossed out and thrown away, which means that not only are you taking into account that that extra money isn't there, but also we have to take into account the fact that now we know that at least $20 million of the amount that they've made so far is likely going directly to Scarlett Johansson. So no matter how you look at it, it's just really hard to see this movie being able to be spun as anything but a financial failure. And speaking of financial failures, I figured I'd give everyone a box office update because Box Office Pro has updated their projections. So Jungle Cruise is actually now expected to make a little bit more than originally was pegged to make around $20 million at least, and most people were predicting around $25 million. Now that's been bumped up to $30 million. There were some that said it could make up to about $40 million. And so we'll see how close it gets to that $30 million mark this weekend. But the fact that it's coming out at over 4,300 screens, if it underperforms, it's going to be really bad, because 30 million at those number of screens is already not good, especially for another $200+ million budget Disney film, which is why I think Jungle Cruise is absolutely going to be a financial flop. You also have The Green Knight coming out, which now has projections at $9.6 million, which is around 2,700 screens, because it is an independent film. Still can't find a budget for this movie, so it's really hard to say. A24, though, it typically makes more independent films, and so it likely has a smaller budget than what might be thought based on the trailer, because the trailer has some CGI effects, and so, or at least it seems to have CGI effects, so it might seem like it would be a higher budget film, but it might actually not be because of being from A24. The movie Old is expected to come in third place at $7.1 million, which would be a 58% drop, and so Old looks like it could potentially be financially successful. And then Black Widow has another 44% drop, going to $6.5 million. And again, looking at these numbers here for Black Widow, it's just really hard to see how anyone could really look at the movie being a financial success. Snake Eyes also, by the way, making $5.2 million. That'd be a 61% drop from last weekend. So it'll be very fun to be updating the box office numbers this weekend, because it looks like we're going to have ourselves another situation where a film like Snake Eyes is going to be a guaranteed financial flop. Whereas at the film Old, it probably will end up being able to be officially, I mean, it's only at negative $9 million right now. And again, by the end of its run, it definitely, I could say at this point, will make that money back. But anyway, what are your thoughts about the new Scarjo lawsuit update? Again, I think that this doesn't look good for any side here, because it just makes Scarlett Johansson look incredibly petty, and it makes Disney look desperate to try and continue to blame the pandemic for their financial woes. And do not be surprised if reports start coming out saying Black Widow's not financially successful, or hashtag Black Widow lost money, and then they start to bring up things like this and other things like the contract, etc., to try and spin this as somehow Scarlett Johansson's fault or the pandemic's fault, and obviously anyone but their own fault. But let me know your thoughts about any of this stuff in the comments section below. If you like this video, smash that like button, light up that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey. It really does mean a lot. Also, a huge shout out to D Sharp, who is one of my newer members over on Locals. And if you want to have your name shouted out at the end of every video and live stream, check out the links in the description to find out ways to follow my channel. And if you are, again, a follower at any level, you get your name shouted out. But if you want access to things like giveaways, you sign up at the Army of Asgard level on any of those platforms, Patreon, Subscribestar, or Locals. And also, if you want access to a podcast, you can sign up there as well. And it's a podcast I do with John the Flick Pig Flickinger. And again, been doing tons of giveaways. Right now, there's a live giveaway for Scarjo on Steelbook. This is the 4K Steelbook. So I'm doing tons of Steelbook giveaways over the next couple of days. And then obviously throughout the entire month of August, I have tons of films to give away. So that kind of stuff sounds interesting to you. Check out those links. Anyway, you guys are awesome. Have a wonderful day, everybody. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my July Patreon and Subscribestar members: Andrew Hoyle, Biffer de Hobbit, Brian P., Dion, Don Bruno de la Mancha, Father Christopher Miller, hail to you, Father, Father Damian Cook, Garrett Searles, Harold Francis, Inflamed Wood, It's a Trap Productions, Jason Clark, Jacob Juice, Jeffrey Toone, Jonathan Carney, Laura the Modern Major General's Story, Mike Jackson, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mr. Peabody and his evil twin with the beautiful hair, On to June, Orange Hat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Priscilla Hall, Riff Magos, Rosetta Allen, Teresa Martin, Theodore Bendon, Tina B, and Tina Bojan. Thank you all very much for supporting me over on Patreon, and also to my Subscribestar members: Fast Reaction, Nosferatu Gatsu, John B, Perpetual Punster, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., Dean Heiss / the new number 2, J. Rod the Beer Guru, and ZK Man. And I also want to make sure to shout out my Locals members. I am now available over at locals.com, and I've got 2 monthly supporters over there. The first of my local supporters is Goblin Squatch. Shout out to you, good sir. And also, I now have a second supporter over on locals.com, and that is Robert Barnes. Shout out to both of you very much. Thank you very much for supporting me on that new platform at the Keeper of the Bifrost level. If you want to find out more information about that, go check out my Locals page. You can find the link in the description, and it tells you everything that you would get in that Keeper of the Bifrost level, which is right now the only level available on that platform. And I also want to make sure to shout out any new Patreon members, and for right now, I want to shout out Mondo Spieler, who is my newest member over on Patreon. And I also want to add my newest Locals members, Cats App and The Real It. Thank you very much for being new members and supporters over on Locals. Thank you all very much for being here today. And if you want to have your name shouted out at the end of every single live stream and video on the channel, please make sure to check out the links in the description of ways that you can support me over on Patreon and Subscribestar as well. It gives you access to things like giveaways of Blu-rays, 4Ks, and digital codes. Also, access to a podcast that I do with John the Flick Pick Flickinger, where we have a lot of fun. We also answer Q&A questions as well. And also you might get access to the Chosen of Valhalla level, which gives you access to a once-a-month podcast exclusively where I bring on you to the main channel with everyone else who is at the level, and we all just talk about movies, pop culture, and tons of fun stuff like that. And also, of course, Tina, who is the Empress of the Universe, is going to give us tons of reviews of movies and also maybe a couple of awesome rants here and there as well. So if that sounds fun to you, make sure you go ahead and check out those links. Again, you're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.